Glossary for Lesson 2.
Allegory. Allegory is the supreme achievement of pagan religion. It is the art of using easily understandable symbols to describe difficult or abstract concepts. In this way, for example, we describe the interaction of spirit and body, a complex and intangible concept, as the dance of the goddess and god, a concrete and easily understood image from which the higher concept can be extracted. It is allegory that allows us to speak of energy as light, and it is allegory that allows us to speak of the universe as a divine web, connecting all things. Allegory allows us to free ourselves from literality and opens the door to abstract thinking.
Aradia, Italian Wiccan tradition as exemplified by the Vangelo delle Streghe.
Born old. People who are born with a veil very thin between the conscious self and the powers of the soul, and who can thus access the higher self easily with minimal or no instruction, are said to have been born old. Talents that others must work to develop come to them easily, seemingly without effort. This is because such souls have already put out great efforts to develop these skills in previous lives, and they bring them through to the present.
Chakra. Chakras are the energy centers of the body, where body and spirit most strongly connect. There are thousands of chakras in every part of the body, and these are connected to each other by meridians or energy pathways. This is the basis of such systems of medicine as acupuncture, shiatsu, and moxidermy, which treat physical illness by applying stimulation to the chakra points. In general practice, however, most people work only with the 7 major chakras, which correspond to the 7 spheres of existence and the 7 bodies. These are the root chakra at the prostate in males and the paraurethral gland in females, which corresponds to the physical plane. The second chakra at the testicles in males and the ovaries in females, which corresponds to the emotional plane. The solar plexus chakra, roughly at the navel, which corresponds to the mental plane. The heart chakra at the heart, which corresponds to the astral plane. The throat chakra at the throat, which corresponds to the solar or egoic plane. The third eye at the level of the pineal gland, which corresponds to the monadic plane, and the crown chakra at or above the top of the head, which corresponds to the divine.
Chaos, primordial deity, goddess before creation, the original state that contains within itself the beginnings of all that is given form in the physical world, but in a dreamlike and undifferentiated state, both female and male, spiritual and physical, dark and light, all bound up together. Chaos is also called unity or union, among many other names. Chaos is both the starting point and the ending point of creation. It is the wholeness of deity, from which we come, and to which ultimately we shall all return, enriched by our physical experiences. Chaos is also thought of as deity at rest, between the creation and the destruction of successive universes, or at the center of multiple universes.
Crone, the goddess in her aged form. The crone, represented by the waning moon, rules over wisdom, understanding, magic, and learning, among other things. People who do not possess wisdom often fear it, and thus the crone goddess is often feared as well. She is the goddess of death, who consumes all things, but only to give them transformation and rebirth. The crone is often equated with the primordial deity, who precedes all creation, and waits to consume it or reunite with it at the end of existence. In popular iconography, the crone is the Halloween witch, with her pointed hat that symbolizes the upward spiraling cone of power, her broomstick for sweeping away old forms of existence, and her cauldron of transformation for creating new ways of being.
Sybil. Sybil was a Phrygian form of the Great Mother, who was adopted by the Romans as Mother of the Gods. Sybil was worshipped by transsexual priestesses, who castrated themselves and afterwards lived as women, somewhat to the horror of the conservative Romans. The myth of Sybil is very ancient, and it has its roots in the earliest times. It was taught that Sybil was the first being to exist in the universe. She was all alone, and possessed the characteristics of both sexes. That is, she was both male and female at the same time. When she grew tired of being alone and desired a companion, she castrated her male parts and flung them to the earth, whereupon they became the god Attis, her son, brother, and consort. It will readily be seen that this myth is cognate to that of the Vangelo delle Streghe, with Sybil being the goddess who creates the god out of herself. Destiny. Destiny refers, ultimately, to the lessons afforded one in life, the chances for growth and advancement which will be placed in our path. What we do with these lessons, of course, is our own. They can be positive or negative according to our choices, rather than any preset destiny. But the lessons themselves are chosen and agreed on prior to birth, to try to stimulate growth the soul needs and desires. Consequently, it can be said that life gives us opportunities that we cannot avoid or short-circuit, because we have asked for them before entering this life. But what the outcome of these opportunities might be is a result of our own choices and actions.
Devotee. A devotee is a person who is particularly devoted to one personal deity who is their patron. A person can be a devotee of more than one deity at a time.
Hecate. Hecate is the great Crone goddess of ancient Greece, patroness of magic and wisdom, and a goddess of the spirit world. Hecate is a goddess of uncertain provenance, being clearly older than and outside the Greek classical pantheon. Some say she is of Mycenaean origin, the culture which precedes the classical. Others say that she is of Phrygian origin. Some equate her with Hecate, the Egyptian goddess of creative force and magic, with whom Hecate was most certainly identified in Hellenistic times. Hecate was known in medieval times as Dame Hecate, in which form she was considered a patroness of European witchcraft.
Leland, Charles Godfrey, folklorist and author who studied witchcraft extensively at the turn of the last century and published the Vangelo della Streghe.
Lower self. That part of ourselves which we are easily aware, the physical, the emotional, and the mental aspects of the being. Through meditation and magic, we can access our higher self, which includes the astral or creative level of our being, our soul, those traits that make us a distinct aspect of deity, our monad, the level at which we are divine, but separate, and ultimately the divine level at which all is one.
Maddalena. Maddalena Talenti was an Italian witch who worked with Charles Leland, supplying him with much information on what she represented to be traditional Italian witchcraft. Maddalena met Leland in 1486 Pisces, 1886 AD. Most notably, Maddalena supplied Leland with a manuscript, written in her own hand, that she represented as expressing the foundational myths of Italian witchcraft. This manuscript was the Vangelo delle Streghe, which Leland subsequently published under the title Aradia, or the Gospel of the Witches. Whether Maddalena copied an older manuscript, wrote down existing oral traditions, or created the text herself is a highly debated issue. Assuming that Maddalena did not create the Vangelo out of whole cloth, exactly whose beliefs it represented is also a question. Maddalena claimed to represent a familial tradition that may or may not have existed, and may or may not have been highly idiosyncratic compared to other Italian witches. However, the Vangelo itself contains some very deep concepts, and some very old ideas, including themes that also appear in other studies of Italian witchcraft, written both before and after the publication of Aradia. Notably, the work of Carlo Ginzburg shows many of the same themes arising in sources from the late Renaissance and Baroque eras. Neither Maddalena nor Leland himself appear to have realized some of the deeper themes in the work, or at any rate to have commented upon these. Roma Lister, a folklorist and friend of Leland's, claimed that Maddalena was actually a pseudonym for a woman whose actual name was Margherita, though others have suggested that Maddalena and Margherita were two different women. In any event, Madalena's final correspondence with Leland informs him of her impending marriage to one Lorenzo Bruciatelli and their plans to immigrate to the United States.
Music of the spheres. Each of the 7 planes has its own energy vibration, which in turn corresponds to a certain sound. For sound is generated by vibration. The vibration of vocal cords creates speech and song. The vibration of a drum skin produces the drum beat. The vibration of strings produces the music of the violin or the cello, so as the energy of the spheres vibrates at a given rate. It too must create a sound. This is the theory behind the music of the spheres. A variety of techniques have evolved from this theory to link sound with energy. They are the basis on which tuning forks, bells, and singing bowls are used for energetic healing, to give just a few examples. Another form in which the vibrational sound is used in energy work involves the linking of 7 vowel sounds with the 7 planes, bodies, or chakras.
Ophion and Eurynome. Eurynome is a very ancient Greek moon goddess. Her name means far wanderer. The creation myth of Ophion and Eurynome is far older than classical Greek mythology and reveals a very different set of beliefs. Chaos was the first thing to exist. This is a primeval feminine, which resolves within itself the seeds of all things, in an unmanifest state, the primordial soup, if you will. A spark of light arose from chaos, and that spark was Eurynome, the moon. She arose and danced through chaos, and where she danced became the horizon that separates the sea and sky. Her dance was beautiful, and it stirred the unmanifest potential within chaos, and caused others to arise as well. The north wind came into being, and it loved Eurynome, and pursued her, following the steps of her dance of creation. Likewise arose the west wind, which pursued the goddess, and after that the south and the east winds. The 4 winds followed in the dance of Eurynome, then overtook her and surrounded her. The 4 winds then coalesced into the form of Ophion, the cosmic serpent, and became the lover of Eurynome. When they had finished, she took the form of a white bird and flew away. She made a nest and laid a cache of silver eggs. From these eggs were born all other things that exist. It will readily be seen that this is the same basic myth found in the Vangelo delle Streghe, with Eurynome and Ophion as goddess and god, from whose union arises all creation.
Patron. A patron deity is a particular goddess or god whom one feels most at home with. Some people have more than one, but usually one will predominate. Any deity that you are drawn to can be your patron deity. One's patron deity is prayed to for guidance, vision, blessings, and so on.
Primeval deity, god or goddess before creation, being both feminine and masculine, both spiritual and physical, resolving all opposites and polarities and containing within itself all things. Primeval deity is both the origin and the destination of existence, the inner soul of all creation. Primeval deity is most often represented as the androgyne or the crone. 7 planes. The 7 planes or spheres of existence are used to describe the different levels of being that spirit or goddess experiences in interaction with matter or God. As is often the case with classifications, these 7 levels are not nearly as neat as they are made to sound, but rather they overlap and blend in ways that defy category. These 7 planes are sometimes described as a successful fall into progressive densities of matter, progressively slower vibrations. The 7 planes are these: physical, at which we experience physical form and sensation; emotional, at which we experience emotional feelings; mental, at which we experience thought and abstract concepts and understandings; astral, at which we create our existence and its conditions; solar, at which we develop those traits that make us a unique part of deity; monadic, that part of us that is divine, but is separate from the whole of deity; and the divine, at which we are one with all existence.
Universal deity. The different faces of deity are ways of understanding universal deity. All of the faces of deity in the end reflect the same universal power, as in fact do we humans and all of the rest of creation. That universal power is infinite and beyond our power to know in its totality, so we make understandable images through which we may interface with it. That infinite power is universal deity, the spirit of deity that is beyond all names and images.
Vangelo delle Streghe, an Aradian Wiccan scripture containing the creation story, the charge of the goddess, and a collection of other myths deriving from Italian witchcraft, published by Charles Lalande in 1499 Pisces, or 1899 AD, under the title Aradia, or the Gospel of the Witches. The book requires serious annotation to be properly understood, but is a cornerstone of Wiccan thought.
Veil. Most people perceive easily only the so-called lower aspects of their being, the physical self and its sensations, the emotional self and its feelings, the mental self and its thoughts. The higher aspects of their being, from which we derive such abilities as clairvoyance, telepathy, telekinesis, and so on, most people can only access through much work and difficulty. Ordinarily, we have no conscious knowledge of them unless we have been born old, in which case we have worked to develop them in earlier lives. The separation between what we consciously perceive of ourselves and our higher powers is symbolically called a veil. This is because in former times an ornamental veil was often used to screen off the sanctuary of a temple from the temple precincts. Consequently, the idea of a veil hiding something spiritually higher seemed a natural allegory.
Vibration. Vibration. The movement of energy is believed to become slower the farther down the 7 planes it proceeds. The slower the vibration, the denser the matter. Thus the physical plane is the home of the densest matter of the slowest vibration, while the divine plane has the least density and the fastest vibration. As energy moves upward from lower vibrations to higher ones, it generates heat. As energy slows from higher to lower vibrations, it produces coldness. You will notice this in energy working.